this video, I'll be sharing tips on what to do immediately after you have been arrested by the police. So who am I? I was arrested for a criminal offence and I was on bail for 3 years before the case against me was dropped in a Crown Court in the UK. Check out my other videos for further information. The usual disclaimer, I'm not a legal professional and the thoughts and advice herein are my own as a layperson. I recommend you get advice from a properly qualified legal professional. Tip 1. Buy a dictaphone. Now your head is going to be spinning over the weeks and months after you've been arrested, but you need a way to concisely record anything and everything that occurs to you. Now these might include ideas or information relating to witnesses or alibis, but also you might have courtroom scenarios bouncing about your head and answers that you can give to a prosecutor when they ask you a particular question. So if you have a dictaphone to hand, you can record this quickly and efficiently. Tip 2, phone records. Now you need to get a record of your landline but also your mobile phone records. This might be useful in compiling a picture on who you were calling. Perhaps they might be accusers or the police or other people who might be able to support your alibi. Now you need to do this quite quickly. You might have your own records, but for instance in my case I called the police several times when I was having trouble with my housemates. Then when the police knocked on my door 2 years later and arrested me, I had to go back to my phone service company and say, can I have the phone records to prove that I was calling the police at the time of my trouble in the shared house. A long story short, there were difficulties in getting some of the records because they only kept the records for 6 months at that time, and also when I mentioned it was for legal purposes, that also created some other problems. So move quickly on getting those phone records. Tip 3, social media. So the same applies. You need to get screenshots to be able to record relationships that you were having online with perhaps accusers or witnesses and the comments and anything relevant. Now you need to back that data up, collect it offline, and maybe also print off copies and file those elsewhere. Ask supporters and witnesses to do the same with their accounts as well. Tip 4, emails, not only at home but also at work. You might have to provide information of where you were at any one time, and if there are emails coming from a computer terminal at work, that would be of help, but also the type of relationships you will be having with your friends and colleagues online from your work. Now I moved jobs twice and I had to struggle to get the information from my old work colleague. They were very helpful, but they didn't have all the information going back several years. But again, you need to move on that quickly. Also, bear in mind that the police might come and seize your computer equipment and your emails and files, so you have to be careful that you have backups and do that quickly. That happened in my case. The police took all my computer equipment, and so I was struggling trying to find email and email records that supported my case. Okay, membership of clubs and things. You might need an alibi or prove a relationship with a place or a person. In my case, I needed to prove a certain lifestyle, that I was out of the house at certain times doing exercise, so I was in the gym. I went to the gym manager, this is several years after the alleged offence occurred, and I explained I needed records. Unfortunately, the gym record system had been updated the previous year and they'd wiped all the data. So again, move quickly if you have this kind of information because it might help your case. Tip 6, CCTV. Now this may or may not apply to your case, but there might be evidence of where you were or where someone else was at any given time. So go to pubs or shops that might have CCTV. Now you might think the police should be doing this, but don't assume they will do it. They either might not do it or they might do it and somehow lose the footage. So move very quickly and try and get that information and go to the pubs or shops or anywhere else or workplaces and try and get that CCTV material for yourself. Tip 7, businesses and any other professional relationships. Could they act as witnesses? For instance, I needed my landlord to act as a witness. She was very useful. The landlord could verify that I was an excellent tenant and only had problems when a particular co-tenant moved in. The landlord could also confirm that I was trying to install locks on my internal doors and some theft that was going on in the house. So are there other organisations or businesses that could be of help to you? So don't delay on this because people move on. I had a good working relationship with my landlord at the particular property company. She was able to vouch for me as a person. So bear in mind that people move on, they go on maternity leave or they change jobs and other things happen in their lives. So move quickly and try and reach the person who is dealing with you and have knowledge of you. Okay, this all leads into tip 8, which is witnesses. Draw up a comprehensive list of witnesses who could support you in one way or another. Now be generous in making this list and even speak to them to ask them to preserve diaries, emails, calendars, anything that could corroborate what you say. So this applies to your friends, your family, those known to you, but also acquaintances, those that are not personally known to you, but you might know them through the workplace. Now, when you compile this list 3 things. List your type of relationship with them, how you know them. Secondly, how they can be helpful. And thirdly, what evidence they can provide: emails, phone calls, conversations, social media. I'll explain a lot more on how this can be used to help the solicitor and the barrister in another video. Tip 9, PACE and also Archbold. So PACE is the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984. This is the guidance on what the police need to do when you're arrested and how you're treated in the police station. I'm going to deal with this in another video. You can download things from the website, from the government website, on the current PACE code and some other sections. Again, I'll do this in another video. And Archbold relates to, again, it's the professionals' guide to criminal pleading, evidence and practice. So this is used by criminal lawyers in England and Wales. It's published by Sweet and Maxwell. This is quite expensive. It's many hundreds of pounds, but you probably can get access to a version in a library. So it covers all sorts of things about chapters relating to sentencing guidelines, criminal procedures. You have statutes and the instruments relating to that, codes of practice, sentencing guidelines and cases. So for instance, abuse of process might be relevant to you. And again, if you can get access to it online, that's probably very good as well. But again, you have all this information as a resource for trying to find out if there's anything relevant to your case and your situation. But I will deal with this in another video. Okay, now here's a series of tips on research. So tip 10, research case studies. The easiest thing to do is online, using search engines for press for similar cases. See what cases have a similar thing to what's happening to you and what happened, and some of the tips. This might prompt some ideas on how to address your case. Tip 11, also research the police. There's no harm in researching the police and what they're doing and any complaints against them and the individuals. See my other video on the guidance from NightJack. I'll link this in the description. Tip 12, more research. Set up Google alerts for anything that might relate to your case. So case studies, but also the people, the elements of your case, because your case might go on for months and some things might start popping up in your inbox when you get these weekly Google alerts that you set up through a Google account. Tip 13, research. More research. Do research on the other person, the accusers, or the organisation that you're having trouble with. So again, everything that I've listed above, use that to investigate the other people, the other things, and the other witnesses that might be appearing in the case. Again, that might throw up some useful information. And tip 14, more research. Read books written by people who've gone through similar cases and trials. You might learn something, or there might be an element relevant to your case, and or it might give you ideas of the questions to ask your solicitor and barrister to investigate. So my example, Mad as Hell, parts 1 and 2, I wrote up a book about an allegation that was made against me. It went on for 3 years and how I defended it. I tried to give some tips. Part 2 in particular, the second book, is where I describe how I defended myself and how I compiled my defense. But there are other books out there, other people who've been on the receiving end of allegations or falsehoods or other things. Go online and look out for books that describe some of the cases, and they may come up with some really useful tips on how they did it. It'll give you a head start on all sorts of things. Tip 15, do some research on solicitors and barristers. Now, you want somebody who is familiar with the type of cases that you're involved in. So you can do some research. This might come from the case studies that you've been doing or the online articles from the press. You can contact the solicitors or the barristers involved in those cases that were relevant, had some relevance to your work. Contact them. If they can't do it, then they might have some recommendations, but start thinking about that, because it is important you get the right barrister in particular when they're representing you. You don't have to take the recommendation of the solicitor that is offered to you. You can take a barrister from doing your own research, but again, start thinking about it. I'm going to do a separate video on barristers and solicitors, so keep an eye out for that. Tip 16. Now, what I had to do was invest in a computer and a printer and a scanner. You're going to have to start preparing a lot of documentation. I will do a video dedicated to defence preparation and the paperwork you need to prepare, but I had to upgrade my computer and in fact get a scanner. I had to scan all sorts of documents so that I could compile the defence material for my barrister and also have records on DVDs and memory sticks and also paper copies. Tip 17, help groups. Now there's lots of help out there. Now I was thinking the best way to do this, and I think there's no harm in going on Twitter and start following people who are talking about these kinds of cases and who've gone through similar situations. So for instance, me, if you follow me, you can see who I'm following, and there are certain groups online and that will give you tips to the organisations and help groups that can help you. For instance, even university law societies, there are lots of students who are out there who like to get involved in this kind of thing. Tip 18, keep a diary. Keep a diary of everything you do and keep it all organised and provide a record of what happens over the months and even years, because there might come a time you might want to write it up or report it in some shape or form to another organisation. So keep a diary so you've got a clear record of what's happened and on a daily basis. You will also want to keep this record of what happens, because there might come a time where you might have to prove your story in 10 years' time, 15 years' time, because there'll be different records. There'll be the official record, but you want to write it up so that you can show something. You can almost publish something. You can lodge something with another organisation of your story, your side of the story. Tip 19, mental health. Now you have to come up with a plan of how you're going to manage this. This could go on for several months, many months, even years. So you have to put in place a system to keep your mental health on the level. So that's exercising and mixing with friends as and when necessary, but don't fall into this habit of withdrawing. You need to come up with a plan and be disciplined in how you're going to manage your mental health through this case. And finally, tip 20, develop a sense of self-reliance. Be self-reliant. Fight, fight, fight. Don't trust the police to do their job or to be impartial or to be efficient. I could list you numerous ways on how they screwed up their investigation in my case, and it could have proved really problematic. Secondly, don't rely on the solicitor. They're busy with other things too, and they might not be terribly efficient in their own shape or form. You have to develop this sense of self-reliance. Be your investigator and your solicitor and your own barrister. Just push, 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 fight, 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 and develop that efficiency. Okay, so that's 20 tips. I hope that was useful. Check out my other videos where I will go into further detail about some of these points and how to manage and prepare your defence. Please subscribe, and if you're interested in helping me, then you can buy the books, obviously. You can find them on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. So they're titled Mad as Hell Parts 1 and 2 by David N. Anderson. But there's also, I'm setting up a Patreon account, so if you want to support me and help me try and knock out more videos, that'd be a great help. Okay, thank you.
Let's go.